Welcome to Arena Decklists. I'm Jerry Thompson. Here with me is Brian Gottlieb, and we are here to talk about Pioneer, brand new Magic format, return to Ravnica and up. Who knows what happened to Historic? Just mysteries. I don't know. But Brian, just read some stuff from this announcement because this is wild.
I would love to read from this announcement. And I have to ask, Jerry, did you have any idea something like this was in the pipeline? This hit me as such a surprise today. Like, usually I have a sense of what's going on with Magic. No idea we were in for anything like this today.
Well, Historic seems like it was just a giant red herring, right? Like, Historic got announced, and it's like, okay, yeah, that makes sense, right? But do we need two of these? I don't know.
Well, let's hear about this announcement, and you can see what Wizards thinks and why they're doing this. And I'm not going to read the whole thing. I have a couple paragraphs picked out, but let's hear what they have to say. This is from Blake Rasmussen, who wrote this article. It says, the story of Pioneer starts with Modern years and years and years ago, 2011 to be exact. Modern was created as an in-between point for players not yet ready for the deep dive of Legacy, but looking for more ways to use their collection once cards rotated out of Standard. It was 18 years after the first Legacy legal set was released, that would be limited edition alpha, and the gap needed filling. Fast forward to now, and Modern has become what we wanted it to be, a non-rotating format players enjoy and feel free to explore. Standard, meanwhile, is thriving and being introduced to a new generation of players through Magic the Gathering Arena. But there's a gap, a sizable one. The oldest Modern set came out in 2003, 16 years ago. And now that Modern's card pool is this large, it no longer serves the needed role of format where you can use your Standard cards after rotation. For players who started more recently and still want to play with their favorite cards after rotation, Pioneer, like Modern before it, bridges that gap while providing a fun experience for both tabletop and Magic Online. Currently, there are no plans to add it as a format to Magic the Gathering Arena. Gerald, react. Shocked YouTube face, go. Good, I like that.
The one thing I will say is that I take issue with the fact that Modern was ever a place to use your old Standard cards.
Agreed.
So I agree that this is a format that can do this. I was just going through a bunch of crap, and where'd I put it? It's going through my old, like, bulk rare binder, or box, whatever.
Yep.
I'm just like, okay, we got, some Radiant Flames.
Good.
Some Abbot of Carol Keeps.
Yeah, that's a good card.
Death Mist Raptors.
Yeah.
I don't know. What else we got in here?
You have the same pile of cards that I presently have pulled out behind me right now.
Yep. So these cards are obviously not good enough to see play in Modern, right? And they were very much just Standard cards, and then they rotate, and I'm dumb and didn't sell them. Mm-hmm. So they're just here sitting in a box. But now I'm like, oh, these cards can actually go in decks. And obviously there are some problematic things in the format. Aetherworks Marvel, Copycat, Thoughtseize, Dig Through Time, whatever. There's a lot of very powerful things, but Andrew Brown and Aaron Forsyth were both tweeting about the format today. Andrew said that they are going to be monitoring the format very closely and everything. So I would expect some bans to happen.
Mm-hmm. They said on and off cycle bans, and props to them for coming out and making that a very clear foundational part of the format. You know this as you buy in right now. I don't want to hear I'm selling my collection because I got priced out of this. You know things are volatile right now. If you're buying yourself a stack of Pioneer cards, you are doing so with risk inherent.
Right. Chad mentions Kethis combo also as another thing where it's like, okay. Anyway, I do like the idea of this as a format. I don't know how it's going to affect the player base as far as like spreading them too thin potentially, where, can you have Standard decks and Pioneer decks and a Modern deck and all of this stuff and also keep up to date on those formats for like a PTQ this weekend and then a GP next weekend? And then, there's Historic if that's ever a thing on Arena. So, yeah, it's just weird to have this many things going all at once, and we'll see what happens, I guess.
Yeah, I have a few thoughts, and they're a little jumbled right now. I'll try and stay focused on one thing at a time, because there's obviously a lot of aspects to this.
Well, it's all linked too, you know?
Yeah.
So just, do what you can.
So the first thing that comes to mind is I'm excited. And that's the overwhelming sentiment I have right now. I love new formats. I love building new decks. And this has my juices flowing, and I'm looking forward to exploring it. That's step one. Step two is I think about how it relates to the game at large. And one of the things that it seems to do almost authoritatively is kill any chance of historic ever being meaningful, which is bad. Like, there has to be some use to these cards on Magic Arena. And how do you get people interested in historic when Pioneer is lurking just outside of that? And like, if the goal of Pioneer is that there needs to be a place to play old standard cards, and that's a fine goal, and here's where I start jumping around. So that's your goal, right? And that was previously the goal with Modern, but the problem is time passes and the format becomes so large and everything gets squeezed out because the card pool is too big, and at some point the cards are too good for new cards to all see play into this new format.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to happen again. It's the only logical conclusion. So, 10 years from now, do we have next Pioneer? I mean, that's where historic shows up, right? Like, now all of a sudden maybe that format matters. But you can't do this in perpetuity. Like, you can't just have 10-year blocks. It seems like what you want is a larger rotating format.
Right.
And it could even be as big as this, and like maybe you clear off 3-year blocks at a time. I don't know, but you're just doing a Band-Aid here. This can't be a long-term solution to this, because
Correct.
It's exactly the same problem that Modern will eventually run into. The other thing is that, like, you have to give me some reason why Return to Ravnica was the correct starting point for this, and not what we presently have with historic. Like, if this was your goal, you could have accomplished the same goal with a format that provides for all of your players. And I have to ask, is it because specifically you want traction on Magic Online? I don't think so. I don't think that's like very high on their hierarchy of goals right now, is to get more people on Magic Online. And why then? Like why is this the spot we're starting from?
I feel like if they did it from Origins or something like that, it would appear to be very similar to historic while not being historic. And starting from RTR, I mean, this is an exciting group of cards, right?
Yeah. Would you be less excited if it started at Kaladesh? You're just done with the format at that point? Because Kaladesh is on Arena, right?
It was at one point.
Right.
I mean, it was coded for it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
It very easily could have been that.
Okay. And then, like, you don't have to put Pioneer up today. Obviously, it's like not ready to go on Magic Arena, and that's fine. And they have other priorities. That's good. But
like fixing the client stability and everything.
Correct. I like that. I support them taking that step. But you could do it eventually, and you're not just closing out this new section of players that you've gotten really excited about the game. I guess, like, if you want to say there's a good reason to do this, it's to get people who have invested via Arena and they start generating an attachment to this new set of cards, the cards from Ixalan, Rivals, so on and so forth, want to keep using them somewhere and have to go to Pioneer to find a home for them, and then you convert your digital players to paper players. That seems very convoluted to me.
Yeah, I mean, you want a place for Arena players to be able to use their cards that rotate, because you can't dust them or anything. Once you have them, they're just there.
Right.
So you still need something like historic to actually thrive on Arena.
Yeah, I think so. But this basically forecloses that possibility as far as I'm concerned. And you look at the level of excitement that has come around Pioneer versus the level of excitement for historic, that's a good argument for going back this far. Like, people didn't care when you announced historic, basically, because it was essentially existing standard. But I think if historic had gone back just a little bit further to, say, Kaladesh, there may have been some excitement. And I don't know, maybe, like, do you buy there's no plans to add this to Arena? Like, are you just in on that explanation?
I mean, going through, this is 29 sets, I think, going through my old cards and cherry picking things that I thought might be good, we could run into a situation like on Magic Online where there were some legacy cards that were not actually on there,
right?
Like on Magic Online to play with.
I live with that. I mean, it's not ideal, but it's fine.
it's not ideal and it's not the same thing. Like you might as well just have people play historic and just tell them that like, Pioneer is similar but different. But I think they could backcode the relevant playable stuff, but I think it takes away from like all of the brewing and the weirdness and the excitement about this new format if you don't have everything just being legal. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I do know what you're saying. It's always going to be a complicated question. Where to start these formats is fraught with peril, and you have to think about what you're including. And I guess to that point, we could get to the Pioneer ban list. 5 cards starting off. 5 fetch lands. What do you think about that ban?
Perfect.
Yeah, agreed. This is exciting. I don't think we've ever done this before, and everyone has yelled about it for years and years. Please ban fetch lands. Finally, we get it.
Right, and you can't upend something like Modern or Legacy by doing that, even though for health of the format and time per round and just sheer annoyance, you can't just up and ban the fetches because people have invested too much in them and the various decks that they're able to build with them and so on and so forth. And this is just like putting their foot down. And like they didn't ban Marvel, they didn't ban Felidar or Saheeli, they didn't ban the potentially busted stuff, but they were like, yo, this is not what this format is about.
And I applaud that move. I think it's a really great move. I think it's something I've been waiting to see happen for a long time in any format. Makes the gameplay much faster, gets rid of all the shuffling. This is just what mana bases are about if these cards are included. Really excited to see this move taken.
Yeah, and chat points out that pre-banning them probably means that there are no fetches in Zendikar Rising.
Does it? Does it mean that?
I could see that, but they could also just be like, yo, we're banning these too.
Yeah. I mean, I think so. I think that's totally reasonable. I don't know. We'll have to see how that part of the equation goes, because I was of the opinion that if you're going back to Zendikar, you always have fetch lands. You just get so much equity as someone who's trying to sell your set. Like, think about how much you get by including fetch lands as rares in these packs. It's just, you're instantly selling so many packs by doing so.
Well, check this out, right? You have Scalding Tarn currently clocking in at $90 in paper. Mm-hmm. And with this set, with Eldraine, we had sweet things like collector boosters with full art cards and whatever. Like, can you imagine Zendikar collector boosters? Like, they're just gone, right?
Yeah.
Like, I want full art fetch lands. Duh.
Everyone does. I mean, those already exist to some extent.
And not with like the OG picture, right?
No, not with the OG picture.
I mean, if you want to talk about the expeditions or whatever, like I don't necessarily want foils, but
okay.
I would want cool ones. So yeah, I mean, obviously that would be a huge moneymaker. It'd be so simple, so easy for them. I would expect it to be the enemy color ones, since those are the ones that are currently worth a little bit more, I think. Mm-hmm. But the enemy colored stuff in Standard is very well supported right now, where the allied stuff is not. So it also makes it kind of weird.
Yeah. Well, we'll keep an eye on that. Anything else from just a broader format, businessy type standpoint with the announcement of Pioneer that you can think of that you want to discuss before we get into actual gameplay?
Just one thing. So I think it is very strange how this exists alongside Historic. They're similar but different, all that stuff. I don't know how that's going to play out. I have no idea. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But the fact that they're like, okay, here is the format. Here is the ban list. This is very clearly a direction that we are going to go. No shuffling, or like, some amount of shuffling, but no fetches, no shuffling 10 times per game, right? And they're going to be watching the ban list. They're going to have BNR announcements outside of the normal cycle. And then they're just like, here's the PTQ schedule, the PT schedule, whatever.
Seems like a priority.
Yeah, they are going hard on it, which means that you should probably be interested in this. So again, at Pioneer DLs on Twitter.
Yeah, the new hottest Twitter account on the planet. How many followers are you up to thus far, Jerry?
Last I checked, it was like 1,100.
Okay, that's pretty quick for an account that launched a couple hours ago. Yeah, one more time, give that Twitter address very clearly and slowly so people can go ahead and hop on that.
At Pioneer DLS.
There you go. That's what you'll get, your hottest Pioneer deck list right now. Okay. So
1274 currently.
1274, very nice. So you've been seeing a lot of deck lists as part of that account. People are sending them to you quickly. I already follow the account. I see them coming out very, very quickly. What where does this format start? What are the foundational elements of Pioneer? Where do we start our brewing? What can't we do?
Well, no fetches does not necessarily mean no 4-color mana base or anything. There are things like Mana Confluence, Aether Hub, Attune with Ether, Fabled Passage, Gilded Goose, Oath of Nissa, things that like help your mana to the point where I don't think it is super wild to just try and figure out like a 4-color thing to do. But barring the mana, which I think is the main thing, I think you need to look at, excuse me, the potentially like very scary combo decks, the things that are going to knock things out of the format. So Aetherworks Marvel is a thing that is potentially very scary. Felidar Guardian, Saheeli, Kethis combo. And then there are things like Thoughtseize that can kind of keep it in check. There's very good removal. There are decent counterspell measures. I think Spell Pierce is very likely going to end up being main deckable card. And then there's also things like Mystical Dispute, too, which could be showing up because of, Teferi, Oko, Saheeli, things like that. So the first thing I did was go through and look at the cheap blue and black cards to try and find like what sort of like fish disruption element we could maybe tackle the format from. And there's definitely a lot of stuff there. One of the things that you probably want to do when looking at a format like this that does have a lot of sets is just look at like the 1 mana cards, like the 1 and 0 mana cards, see what people are going to be doing on the first few turns, because there is a lot of powerful stuff in basically every color combination. And the other thing that I think is going to be omnipresent in the format is mono red aggro. You have Monastery Swiftspear, Eidolon of the Great Revel. You can even go up as far as Hazoret the Fervent. And, mono red's been good for almost every standard season. And now you just get to put all of those cards together.
Ramunap Ruins, formerly banned in Standard, coming back to this deck.
Yeah, if you want it.
Yeah, a lot of stuff you can do on the mono red side of things. One of the most important things I urge people to keep track of while they are doing their Pioneer brewing, when you combine this many sets, the pieces are much more degenerate than they were in their individual contexts. So something like Kethis, which was already extremely, extremely powerful, when you add a huge, huge amount of sets to the mix, you're going to find a lot more powerful interactions. And with no ban list, this format is closer to Legacy than it is to Standard. And when Modern launched, I went around before that Pro Tour telling everyone who would listen to me, please do not play Cloud Post. This is nonsense. This is the most degenerate format in the history of the world.
You didn't tell me.
Well, I don't think we talked as much back then. I told, who was I talking to a lot? I told Jay Ford. I told Costa.
Well, Jay Ford played Birthing Pod. So.
I know. Nobody listened to me. That's the entire point I'm getting at, is no one listened to what I had to say. It was the most degenerate format possible. And I would expect this to be very similar in a lot of ways. Just think about the power level of cards that are present here. We have Treasure Cruise. We have Dig Through Time. We have Thoughtseize. You mentioned there is good disruption. I think that is a very good thing to keep track of. But you need to play it. And doing things like Emma on Twitter mentioned someone who wanted to Whip of Erebos back their Siege Rhino. And it's just like, we're not doing this. This is never going to happen. Let this dream go.
I believe the format will get to a place where Siege Rhino is playable after some bannings.
Okay, that's reasonable.
We aren't there yet.
Yes. Presently, you need to think, what can I do that's hyper degenerate? And there are things available, right? There's a Mox. There are more cheaper legends when you expand the card pool like this. You have things like, even like 1 mana Gideon plus Mox is pretty telling. There's not a whole lot of 1 mana legends floating around, but that's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
Jace is around. If you're talking 2 mana legends, you have Flip Jace in Magic Origins. So some really powerful options there. And Moxes are always good. And this format has exactly what it takes to enable those Moxes.
Yeah, probably. I think it's tough because I try to build a bunch of just, normal like aggro-ish or mid-range-ish Mox Amber decks. And when there is stuff like Kethis and Emery that you could be doing, those seem like better shells for Mox Amber.
Sure.
Just playing creatures. But yeah, that is certainly one of the things that you can do. The thing that I was most disappointed on, and this was just like my first glance through what people were sending me was just the lack of like a Thalia type of effect for the format.
Okay. Huh.
It's like red has Eidolon, blue has Pierce and Mystical Dispute, Silumgar's Command, things like that. And then black has Thoughtseize, Duress, Kitesail, Freebooter, and white is just like, yeah, I have all these 1-drops and can do Venerated Loxodon or whatever.
There's the flying Thalia, right? I mean, that's 3 mana versus 2, but...
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the problem, right?
Yeah. No, that's a big difference.
And then got some people in the chat mentioning like Hardened Scales, Affinity, and yeah, I made a laundry list of those cards because you do have a lot of different stuff. If you want to do Hardened Scales with Winding Constrictor, animation module is there. Otherwise, there's like the Ginger Brute, All That Glitters, and Soul Artifact, Ghostfire Blade. Like you can just give them the beatdowns. Stubborn Denial is another card that exists, so you're gonna want some amount of like big creatures to power that up, and I think it could fit in Affinity. And then Metallic Rebuke is another nice card. So a lot of decks that I want to build, a lot of places I want to start.
So why don't I try and pin you down to some pillars? Because I think that's the best way for me to understand this format. And like I said, you're going to have to guide this because I was kind of tied up between our last podcast that we just did a few hours ago. Our content creation schedule has gotten very strange, Gerald. We have a lot of things going on.
Well, we have to deliver the breaking news now, whereas before we didn't have to do that. So
right. So there's kind of 4 things that I would talk through real quick if you have thoughts on them. The first point would be the default mana bases, like how you build the just 2-color mana base, what what dual land you're supposed to use in that spot. The next thing I would ask about is the best aggro deck, and you've already mentioned some. Then I would ask what the best combo setups are. And then I would ask, how do you, in this insane world, possibly play something that resembles Control? What you got for me? Start with the mana, please.
Well, Shocklands, Fastlands, and then the Innistrad show lands, the check lands, the cycling lands. I'm really hyped about Shocklands and Fetch lands, or Fastlands.
Mm-hmm.
Those are obviously the best ones and are very aggro friendly. And then if you have something to kind of piece it all together, like if you have a Gilded Goose or a Mana Confluence, you can very easily bridge to 4 colors. And then in slower decks, yeah, you can play like Shockland, Checkland, and that's probably fine if you're playing some sort of control deck. And then Fabled Passage is a thing that does exist for slower decks. I don't think that's necessarily something you actually want in this format, but it is an option. And then for utility lands, I really like Field of Ruin and Mutavault. And then Westvale Abbey was the other one that I saw where it's like, I could see this. And then Nykthos. Nykthos is another big one. And then for other potential 5-color things, we have Unclaimed Territory and Spire of Industry. And I think I'm missing like a couple other cycles of lands probably, but I didn't go through and, I had to put this list together in an hour, man.
What do you mean? You haven't been able to completely solve this format over the last hour? That's what I expected from you when we agreed to do this podcast.
No, I haven't. I did a lot of work, I think, and I easily have like 30 decks that I could build, but
okay. Well,
haven't solved it quite yet.
Sounds like a good starting point. Any merit to Fabled Passage plus Deathrite Shaman? I know people just like think about Deathrite Shaman and it being one of the most powerful cards ever. Is it worth going out of your way to have a somewhat suboptimal mana base to potentially enable that card?
So the trick is to, instead of play Fabled Passage, you put Deathrite in a deck with things like Citrus Supplier or Grizzly Salvage.
Okay.
Like, if you're doing any sort of filtering or self-mill, anything like that to feed the Deathrite Shaman, that is much better than playing some land that is going to slow you down so that you can accelerate on a future turn,
Word. Okay, we'll have to see if people are able to make Deathrite Shaman happen. Because if you remember Deathrite Shaman's time in Standard, didn't see that much play. It was like a 2-of sometimes in the Abzan Reanimator decks, and that's really about it as far as its run in Standard. It is hyper-reliant on fetch lands to really be the all-star we know it as.
Yeah, people in the chat talking about like Delirium, Satyr Wayfinder, Jace Vryn's Prodigy. Like, there's a lot of stuff to actually turn on Deathrite to the point where I especially don't think that you need to go as far as Fabled Passage.
Oh, man, I'm starting to get those juices going with like Jace Vryn's Prodigy, Deathrite Shaman, Thoughtseize, some kind of Sultai nonsense is right up my alley. If I can make that
Oko.
work. Oko. Yeah.
Oko Thoughtseize is going to be the backbone of any mid-range deck, I think.
Makes sense to me. Any chance Oko's just the best card in this format?
It's hard to call best card when the format is pretty busted, but right. I do think that Oko is going to be the card that is going to prop up mid-range decks. It is going to help them keep burn honest, basically, and then you're going to see a lot of copies out of sideboards of things like Affinity, and Kethis is going to play the main deck for sure. Marvel's probably going to have them in the sideboard. Like, they are going to be all over the place.
Okay. So why don't we get to our 3 pillars of modern Magic, and maybe those pillars are somewhat flawed these days, but where do you see our aggro dalliances starting? You mentioned mono red, you mentioned affinity type builds, obviously no actual affinity in those decks. What else catches your eye for potential aggro inroads presently?
So all the cards for mono blue tempo, like the Curious Obsession, exist, and also mono blue devotion. I don't know if you want to lean really hard one way or the other, or if you want to merge those decks, or if it's better just, playing counterspells in something else, or playing counterspells alongside a good threat that is not blue. But there's definitely a shell there. But the red cards are just so busted. Bomat Courier, Eidolon of the Great Revel. You have Rabblemaster Ferocidon, Bone Crusher Giant. You have all the burn spells. People in the chat mentioning Smuggler's Copter too in a lot of these shells. So aggro definitely has a lot of tools, and with Shocklands being the primary source of mana and you not being able to fetch basics and stuff, it's entirely possible that people show up with 3-color mana bases that just have 12 shocks, right? And then they're just dobs.
Yeah, mono red will be the fun piece in the early days of this format. I don't think there's any way of getting around that.
Especially with Eidolon.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you're thinking of Magic Origins era mono red. That deck was really strong. It kind of crushed that PT. Eidolon, Exquisite Firecraft. It also had Abbot of Carol Keep in that deck, I believe, in a lot of instances. Yeah, just really good Magic cards, good, solid, powerful red cards.
Yeah, I mean, you also have Soulscar Mage, right? So it's you could even do something combo-y and lean really hard into the prowess aspect of things and play Become Immense or whatever.
Yeah, I like that approach as well. Actually, those 2 PTs back-to-back had the mono red deck, and then there was the aggressive double strike deck as well with the Become Immense combo and landfall setups. Yeah, Temur Battle Rage, yeah. So interesting to see if you can go down those combo aggro routes as well.
Yeah, we're going to have decks that are going to have somewhat reasonable turn 3 kills, just turn 3 goldfishes, barring no interaction. I would imagine that your opponents are going to start on, Burn Spell or Thoughtseize or Fatal Push or whatever, but this format seems very fast.
This seems like a fine place to have this conversation, and it's not something I've heard people talk about too much. The delve spells, Treasure Cruise, Dig Through Time, obviously gaining a lot of attention. Mm-hmm. In the absence of fetch lands, are these cards worse than people expect them to be?
Yes.
Okay.
It's the same with Deathrite, and you can do things to try and enable those cards, but it's not legacy. You're not going to be casting Dig Through Time on turn 3 for 1 mana. It's just not going to be happening. And if you do build your deck to be able to do that, it's probably because you put in way too many enablers, and then your Treasure Cruise is just going to draw a bunch of bricks, right? So I'm excited for Dig Through Time as a 2 of in some mid-range decks, or a 4 of in a control deck that's trying to cast it on turn 5 for 2 or 3 mana. I think that that's going to be a perfectly reasonable thing to do. And I think that Marvel will play some amount of Dig Through Times, but I think Dig is going to be the one that sees a lot more play than Cruise will.
That sounds correct to me. Cruise was the one that usually needed to be hard enabled. Things like Thought Scour, heavy fetch lands, and Dig Through Time. Certainly the more balanced card in some ways, which is a weird thing to say, but it had more roles. You didn't have to be as all in on your enabling plan. You could just play Dig Through Time for 5 mana in some spots and be pretty happy about it, quite frankly.
Right, and then you just keep playing Magic, and then the next one costs 2, and then that can snowball.
Right, correct.
But yeah, the blue decks having Dig, Search for Azcanta, Jace. You have all the kind of like card advantage-y engine type of things that you could possibly want to build around.
Yeah, good stuff. Okay, so that's where our aggro decks start. We can now move on to our control decks, and I guess I want to capture mid-range in that as well. I mentioned Sultai as something that seems extremely promising, very, very powerful cards. But what are kind of the focal points for these mid-range decks? Like, what do you have to be able to do as a mid-range deck in this format as you see it? And the thing that really comes to mind for me is Thoughtseize. Like, 1-mana disruption seems like the absolute key.
Yeah, Thoughtseize is super important. Past that, I don't know. I haven't really looked at a lot of these decks. Like, I know that I saw a lot of Scavenging uses, but it's like we don't have Tarmogoyf. We do have Tireless Tracker, but Ooze and Tireless Tracker by themselves isn't like a brick wall that can stop aggro, right? So you need something that can actually block a Swift Spear.
Right.
Sylvan Caryatid, chat saying like Gurmag Angler, but Gurmag has the same kind of problems.
Courser of Crufix is another card that like functions in that role. None of these are exciting.
No, you're trying to play Courser of Crufix in the Marvel format. I don't know.
Right.
So green is obviously very good in Standard, has been for a while. And then for a format like this, where everyone gets busted stuff, it's like, oh, the green cards, they might just fall short.
Interesting. That'll be a nice change of pace after green dominating for what will be the foreseeable future. There are these somewhat conditional removal spells, things like Abrupt Decay, Assassin's Trophy, that the green-black decks could lean on. Obviously, those come with some downsides. I'm trying to think about Abrupt Decay and how that will apply to this format. How often do I think things get outside the realm of Abrupt Decay? And the way things are set up presently with no bans, I bet Abrupt Decay is going to be pretty good for the early stages of this format.
I agree. Marvel is the one thing I can think of, and things like Dragonlord Ojutai maybe, but very few things are getting outside of Abrupt Decay. Murderous Cut is another card that I think is going to be good. Like that card will probably see more play than things like Gurmag Angler,
So the new foundation of mid-range control, 3-mana Planeswalkers, and we've already talked a bit about Oko, how you think that's super important. But there's other ones out there too that I expect to have some impact. Teferi, what do you think about Teferi in this new format?
Teferi's great.
Yeah, I think so. And its effect on Aetherworks Marvel, of course, very important. Prevents that card from doing anything. So that should come up from time to time. There's also like Narset for all the busted card drawing that's going around. If Treasure Cruise matters, Narset looks pretty promising. Obviously, Dig Through Time skirts that. So there's ways around Narset. But all these cards are just like, when you start doing more degenerate styles of Magic, these are the cards that really shine.
Yeah, for sure. Chat pointing out Spell Queller, definitely a big fan of that, especially in combination with Teferi.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Saheeli decks actually kind of strike me as the things that are going to end up being like the green mid-range decks.
Okay.
Because you're going to want some 1-mana accelerator, you're going to want Oath of Nissa and Oko, and then something to fill in between. It could be energy stuff like Rogue Refiner. You could play Walking Ballista if you want that sort of thing. And if the format doesn't have very much toughness, then that could be a good call. Maybe you just play Heart of Kiran, Smuggler's Copter.
Yeah, this all sounds promising. I mean, you can start at Gilded Goose, right? There's your 1-mana enabler. You go into Oko, you go into Teferi on turn 2. Both those cards probably going to have immediate impacts and help you cement that Saheeli combo. Okay. I'm buying it. This sounds pretty good to me.
Quinn Hunt says Sylvan Advocate. I think it's just a little too bad.
You need the game to go long for Sylvan Advocate to ever be worth, like, that upside doesn't come without a cost, and a 2-mana 2/3 in a format that's looking somewhat degenerate kind of scares me.
Ooh, Painful Truce. That's a good suggestion. I like that card. I don't think it's right for this format, but we'll see. Feel like there's going to be enough decks that can, like, if you can play Painful Truce, you can probably play Teferi or Oko or something along those lines. So for 3 mana, you're definitely getting way more out of those than out of Painful Truce.
Right. What do you think about Once Upon a Time in the format?
Probably Gas. I don't know where exactly you want to play it, but I mean, there's affinity, hardened scales type stuff seems decent there. Obviously, you don't really want to be casting it, but in order to set up your most busted draws, I think it sounds pretty good there. You probably don't need it in like an energy shell because all of your cards are sort of the same. And then control doesn't really do anything. Maybe if there's like a rampy type deck.
So I was thinking big mana. Like you still have Hour of Promise into the Eldrazi temples to do very early Ulamog stuff. That's probably worse than other ways to get to Ulamog that are available in the format, but maybe you can find enough underpinning ramp to get to Hour of Promise very quickly.
Yeah, just rebuild Golos, man. Let's do it.
Sure, why not? We've just lived through that nightmare. We can do it one more time.
This is where Field of Dead. This is where you're supposed to go to play your cards that are no longer legal in Standard, right?
That is true. That is how the format has been sold to us, so I will be playing Field of the Dead. Thank you very much. I knew I did right by buying those foil Field of the Deads.
Look, man, after 20 cards get banned, it'll probably be pretty good.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so that is the mid-range / what about hard control? Does hard control have a form? Teferi-based control? Dig Through Time, Sphinx's Revelation? Any of that interest you?
Sphinx's Rev less so when you have Dig Through Time.
Right.
And Silumgar's Scorn looked like the best 2-mana counterspell to me. So okay. I feel like you're incentivized to do Ojutai things, which doesn't seem that bad. Because
that eats up your 5-mana slot, though, where you want to be playing like Big Teferi.
Oh, why would I want to play Big Teferi?
Big Teferi is a good Magic card and has literal legacy pedigree. Certainly good enough for Modern. It's got to be good enough for this format.
I can't think of a scenario where Ojutai saw play in Legacy. It has seen play in Modern. Definitely not as much as Teferi.
Right.
But those formats also have access to things like Mana Leak already, whereas people were sending me deck lists with like Quench in them, you know? So
we can't even play that card in Standard right now.
Right. And everyone's curve is going to be so low for the most part anyway, but
right.
Yeah, I think you're going to need something like that, like some sort of tap out threat. And just because Ojutai enables Silumgar's Scorn, I think that might be where you want to go. But you probably need more dragons than just Ojutai, so I'd also have to look at that.
Right. None spring to mind right now. There's like the 6-mana blue-black dragons, and I can't see either of those being particularly viable.
Yeah, people are mentioning like Censor, Gearhulk, like these are all fine cards, but if you are like what counter spells are you playing? You're trying to control the early game with like nothing. There's Spell Pierce. I wrote this down in the context of the mono blue deck, but like Ceremonious Rejection, Dispel, Dive Down, Spell Pierce, Stubborn Denial, Censor, Wizard's Retort.
They're all hyper conditional.
Yeah. Yeah, Drown in the Lock is good. I was thinking more of Azorius than Dimir or Esper, though.
Is Drown in the Lock good? Like, don't you have to have some kind of setup for your opponent? I don't buy that card. You can just naturally play it.
You can.
I've been torched by that card so many times.
You just play Magic. Just play Magic. Just do your thing. If you're playing Drown in the Lock, you're probably playing Thoughtseize. You're probably playing Fatal Push. You're going to kill some other stuff.
I'll give you your playing Thoughtseize, so that at least gives you some points. I don't know. I think there has to be a little bit more than just I have 4 Thoughtseize in my deck and now my Drown in the Lock is relevant, because missing on that card being good on turn 2 is a huge part of the drawback. Like, there's a reason you're talking about needing turn 2 counter Magic.
So people are asking, how good is Fatal Push without fetches? And I think that is a reasonable question. But
it's worse.
It is worse. It all depends on what 3 and 4 mana cards you want to push in the format. Whereas in Modern, that very rarely had to come up anyway. So I want to say, like, I've basically never enabled my Fatal Push in Modern. You know, it's like 90% of the time I'm just casting it raw, right?
Right.
This format's going to be a little bit different, where I'm sure there are going to be 3-mana things we're playing, especially in the context of this red deck, right? Where they just have a bunch of awesome 3-mana cards. But there are still ways to do it where it's like you play out your, let's say, Sylvan Advocate or whatever, and they burn it away to get in with the Rabble Master, and then you just get to push it after your thing dies. So
there's also Kethis and Emery in this format as well, which are 2 cards which seem very, very important to kill.
Yeah, what kills those? Drown in the Loch?
Maybe occasionally. What reliably kills those? I don't know. You mentioned earlier you think the removal is quite good. I am not as convinced as you are. I think there are some holes in the removal as it stands right now.
I think there's good 2-mana removal. I think we're lacking in 1-mana removal.
Abrupt Decay, someone mentioned. That makes sense. That it seems like 3 mana could very well be the break point where like the creatures start getting priced out. So I could see Abrupt Decay being a very, very important card.
Yeah, I've scored on my list. Abrade is definitely going to be very good. Fiery Impulse will be good if you are playing some red, like Jeskai Cruise thing, like Jeskai Black. I'm in for that.
Sure. Dreadbore.
Ooh, yeah, Dreadbore.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that.
That means we're playing Rakdos. How the hell did that happen?
We decided we didn't really care about our results in this tournament. Murderous Cut is one I forgot about. That's a good one.
I mentioned that one.
Okay.
I think that's good. It's just going to take a while.
Yeah. Without the enables, it's tough.
Harness Lightning, Declaration in Stone. Okay. Yeah, Cast Down seems very bad in this format, right?
Some good legends out there for sure. Huh. Okay, let's go to the third pillar. Let's go to the third pillar, Jerry. I want to talk combo. And you can tell me what you have for me there. Because I think that's where this format starts. We need to understand how we're being pressured by combo, what we need to account for, and then we can start building our control and mid-range decks. And I think there are a lot of paths to go down for combo, and probably just a ton we're not even thinking about right now that are quite good.
What is your definition of combo?
Not what it used to be, obviously. It doesn't have to be stack-based combo. Just basically, like, I've kind of picked up the Pokemon terminology where we're just looking for one-turn kills, where we do something and then we end the game basically on the spot.
Okay.
So Kethis certainly fits that definition. Anything you're doing with Emery probably fits the definition.
Yeah, Copycat too.
Copycat, yep.
Jeskai Ascension, Emery falls under the Kethis category, I think. Aetherworks Marvel is probably more combo-ish than these other decks, but doesn't actually kill on that turn. You might have a virtual kill. There's like some Scape Shift setups that also don't kill people. There's some good Dredge enablers, like Narcomoeba, Creeping Chill, Prized Amalgam, Scrap Heap Scrounger, Haunted Dead.
Okay.
So, again, you're setting up virtual kills. There's like some good Aristocrat stuff, Gate to the Afterlife, Rally the Ancestors. That will likely end up being a one-turn kill a lot of the time. And then I wrote this one down just for you. Golos, Cascading Cataracts.
Okay, that's what we gotta do. I'm in.
In case you find some way to build like mono brown ramp or whatever, and you need something to just turn on all 5 colors, you're there.
Love it. So when we talk combo, it seems like the early focal point is, in fact, Aetherworks Marvel. And I have to tell you that in comparison to everything else going on here, that card doesn't frighten me that much. I'm kind of surprised people are particularly hyped over that right now. It seems like one of the easier things to respond to. And obviously it's a very parasitic mechanic. So you're basically just playing a standard deck against decks that get to go super broad and encapsulate the entire format. I don't know. I don't see the big fear over that deck.
Kind of disagree. Like, yeah, you're locked into playing Attune and Rogue Refiner and probably Green Puzzle Knot and stuff, but then the rest of your deck has a bunch of slots, And there's no reason why... So, PT Kaladesh, the Marvel decks were all like contingency plan, like full-on combo decks, and then as time went on,
right,
they loosened up a little bit and got like more and more mid-rangey, right?
Yes. That
is the place you want to be. So if you get to play like Thoughtseize, Decay, Oko, whatever, and you're just this mid-range deck that also gets to Marvel into Emrakul or whatever, that sounds dope.
That sounds way more promising than a pure combo setup. I would also tell you, though, you cannot talk about Marvel without mentioning the context that was present at the time Marvel existed, where for whatever reason there were no answers to anything ever. Like there was no pithing needle effects.
Yeah.
There were no
reasonable
discard. Yeah, there was nothing. There was just absolutely nothing. Like it was a horrible piece of design coming together to just make this miserable standard format. And like the present standard format, like banning Field of the Dead, that's a mistake that seems totally within range, totally reasonable, and like you could be doing totally solid work, and that's still something that could happen. Whereas Aetherworks Marvel was like, it felt like a failure on a lot of levels to not account for a card like that in any way, shape, or form. And I think people forget that when they're having their perceptions of how good that deck was shaped. It just was unrealistic that it should ever be allowed to exist in that environment. And when this field gets very, very large, we have all these unusual options to control Aetherworks Marvel. I'm not convinced it's going to be a problem.
Well, people in chat are saying Oko the Marvel, and that's not really how that works because you still get to play Marvel and spin it, you know?
Right.
Teferi is obviously a thing, and yes, there are more answers now. That's why it's your backup plan, y'all. So, like, when people are talking about Copycat, and it's like, oh, just shock their Saheeli, duh. And it's like, well, I'm just going to play a normal game, make you have to shock my creatures, and then eventually I'll kill you.
Yeah.
That is how this works. This is what makes a good combo deck.
How has the underlying stuff to Cat combo evolved over time? Because we were playing stuff like Rogue Refiner, we had to use the energy package. Obviously, you will not have to use the energy package any longer. There's a lot of underlying setup that can change anything.
Food package now.
Yeah, I mean, food seems reasonable. Goose, Oko, totally good setup. You have like a reasonable Elvish Visionary to use if that's what you want in that slot to be blinking. So I think that deck will change quite a bit from what it looked like previously.
What Elvish Visionary? What card?
You could use Fibblethip, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I guess, I mean, this deck could also, like, play a Mox or whatever, but, yeah, I was thinking, like, Goose Oko, Oath of Nissa, Teferi, Spell Queller, Felidar, Saheeli, some sort of removal, and that's probably a deck.
Yeah, sounds good to me. Do we have actual Elvish Visionary? I'm not sure if that card actually exists.
It was in Origins, yeah.
Okay, yeah. This is going to take a while to understand exactly what cards we have available. I think I just need to spend some time going through all of these sets, maybe just going through like the old formats and thinking about what decks were good in each of them, and that should prepare me to start getting these decks together.
Yeah, so I started by going through blue and black cards because I wanted to see what sort of like zombie thing or Curious Obsession thing there was, and I imagine at some point I'll go through the green decks and also just like make a massive list about that. So yeah, people are asking me about zombies. I mean, I think Cryptbreaker is awesome, and if you have anything to do with Stitcher Supplier, that's great.
Yeah, Stitcher Supplier is another one of those cards that, as the card pool gets larger, gets better and better for sure.
So what else is there anything that you're excited about? I was kind of looking at Thalia's Lieutenant because we have Unclaimed Territory and Mana Confluence.
Okay.
I wonder what we could do with that.
Yeah, there's probably some tribal setups out there. I would say I am most excited for seeing what like the Sultai mid-range decks look like. Those will be probably something a little bit further down the line once we understand exactly what we're dealing with. If I had to like play an early Pioneer tournament, I am looking at the most busted combo I could find. Kethis is a super clean transition, and I don't know that people will be able to build reasonable sideboards in week one, so just punish them for not having access to things. And like you said, Fun Police Mono Red, if you're just super concerned with winning immediately, that's probably the easiest way to do so.
Yeah.
People pointing out Rest in Peace is legal.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, that'll check
great.
some things.
Leyline of the Void, too.
Yeah, good answers there. I'd like to see that.
Brutality is another card that's going to be quite good against Mono Red and maybe some of these combo decks. Collected Company, Spell Queller. I really think that Metallic Rebuke is going to be good too.
Okay, you've been on that card for a while.
Yeah, I gotta find exactly like what kind of weirdo artifacts you can use. I mean, there's food and clues and stuff like that, and that might just be good enough.
Right.
Like Metallic Rebuke Oko is nice.
Yeah, that's a good little setup for sure. I'm excited to see what kind of nonsense my geese can get up to in a new format. Yeah, that about wraps up like my starting point for the format. Just doing these busted things early. Quickly, I'm sure, losing interest in that and figuring out how to contain these things via mid-range Sultai-ish strategies.
Yeah. People in the chat asking if there is a good search engine for this. Yeah, Scryfall. Scryfall put up a Pioneer search earlier today, which is what I was using.
Pretty ridiculous how quickly Scryfall is moving. You and I have been hyping Scryfall as deck builder for a while now. Can head over there, get to building your Pioneer deck list for sure.
I feel so dumb because I just instinctively went to Gatherer for years, and people were were like talking about using Scryfall and stuff. I'm like, looks kind of complicated.
Looks different and scary. No, it's better in every way. So easy to use.
What's going on with my arm? I don't know. It's like
yeah, you're kind of transparent right now. Sorry about that. That's
nice.
Probably part of my setup. Just live with it. How about
Robo Gerry to Ghost Gerry?
No, I don't want any more alternate Jerrys. I'll just take regular Gerry, please. What do you think about some chat questions? You want to take questions from people? See what they're thinking
sure.
about? Yeah.
No, I know that we almost certainly missed a bunch of stuff when we were talking and everything.
Right. What y'all got for us? What do you want us to talk about? What are you excited about in Pioneer thus far? Reanimator possibilities. Ask Unburial Rice.
Maybe I would have to look at what sort of reanimator stuff there actually is.
What are the big targets for reanimation spells? There's got to be a lot with a card pool this big.
I mean, there's some Eldrazi and there's a Tarka if you want to do a thing that you can also cast.
Okay. Yeah, that's nice. Waffle SD asking how good is Teferi going to be? Very good is my guess. 3-mana Teferi I think remains important in this format as well.
I had a question that scrolled by very quickly that was, how would you update standard Kethis? I think you just have to approach it like it's a new format. You just have to look at the card pool, because you're just not going to end up playing the same mana base. You're not going to have things like Tamio in your deck. It's just new. And you're going to need artifacts for Emery and everything. Just start all over.
Yeah, you can look at it in terms of like the baskets you need to fill. Like you need to fill X legends, you need to have X mana, and that's fine. I think that's a totally reasonable framework to start building under. But at some point, you have to cast that framework aside and just figure out what the best version of Pioneer Kethis looks like.
Yeah, people talking about how Veil of Summer is going to be disgusting. You are correct.
Card's good. Collected Company decks. Any interest in doing Collected Company stuff? Getting Spell Queller from Collected Company, pretty sweet.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know what your value 2-drop is, but you can have Rogue Refiner, Tireless Tracker, Spell Queller at 3. Jace VP at 2 is pretty nice.
It's a lot of 3s, but yeah, some mix of that.
Well, you need to have a decent amount of 3s, right? Like you need 12 3-drops basically to make your companies actually get you mana and hit powerful things.
Right. Very true.
Arcanist Thoughtseize, sure. Aristocrats, yes. Sylvan Advocate, probably not. Voice of Resurgence, yeah, maybe. Yep, Rally's a thing. Den Protector, maybe. Paradise Druid, probably not. Risen Reef, I have to do a search for sure. Someone was talking about Young Pyromancer with Risen Reef, and it's like, cool, but I don't know what that looks like. Your teamer spells.
That's a weird one. I like this question. I'm going to modify it a little bit, but Guru asked, what would be your, oh my god, ban these cards ASAP? I'm going to ask you, what do you think the first 3 cards that make their way to the ban list are?
Oh, dear. Oh, dear.
Gerry went full Oko on us.
I'm looking.
I'll take some other questions while you're doing that. Waybosset wants to know, do we agree with the decision to not have Modern Horizons be legal? Hell yes. Hell yes. Are you kidding me? Do you want to ruin the format right away? Get gone. Will we do a podcast on all the possible pillars of the format once we know what they are? Sure.
Yeah.
I don't think we can figure that out ourselves. But once we can get a good sense of what's going on, yeah.
Dude, this red deck looks so good.
That's not what you're doing right now, Gerry. You're looking for banning.
Bomat Courier. These are the most busted 1-drops of all time.
You're looking for cards to ban. I don't want to hear about your red deck. Thoughts on the deck like Ramp Marvel that cheats Ulamog, Emrakul into play? It seems like there should be an absolute thing we can do. 100%.
Red is too good. Oko is going to be ubiquitous. Affinity decks look fine. I'm not worried about like War Paradoxical Outcome. Things I'm mostly worried about are like Kethis and maybe Marvel outside of like Mono Red.
Okay. Would you say you're worried about Mono Red, or do you think it's just like a limiting factor on the format and maybe a positive one, quite frankly?
It's just going to be so good. I don't know. I feel like you are just going to be dead on turn 3 a lot of the time.
Well, that's scary. Very scary. That's an easy thing to take care of in the future, but it's scary. Sphinx's Revelation, just a huge trap, probably.
Yes.
Probably.
There are so many better cards.
For real, is Hornet Nest a card people can play? I don't think so. I don't see why it would be. It wasn't a card people could really play in Standard.
I'm also looking for something to do with Wishclaw Talisman.
That's a nice one. Any new archetypes that you like that aren't just extensions of former Standard archetypes? Something like Wishclaw Talisman comes to mind. I think that just requires such a deep level of understanding of the card pool that it's not a call we can make right now. Like, it's... You have to go deep before you're finding that kind of stuff.
6'7". I look forward to policing all your shenanigans. Yeah.
Someone's got to. Liliana, the Last Hope, and Gideon, two powerful planeswalkers we haven't mentioned. It's funny that these cards, which were like Standard staples, look quaint in the face of War of the Spark planeswalkers and now Oko. These new 3-mana planeswalkers that are just off the charts powerful.
Yeah, the problem is, like, Liliana came down and either killed something or neutralized something, and I'm not sure that she actually does that still.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if Goose turns out to be the 1-mana accelerant, Liliana not killing it is a pretty big problem.
Yeah, Oko plus Heart of Kieran, that is real.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Super real.
Yeah, maybe those Sultai decks will have a more aggressive slant than we're currently envisioning and be able to turn the corner real quick, because that setup sounds aggressive as hell.
Yeah, a lot of people asking about the difference in context with Fatal Push and the Delve spells and things like that, where we need to do something bigger than just try and explain it away very quickly. You know, this is a thing that people are going to need to know and they're going to have to focus on.
Yeah, I'm sure we will do many deeper takes on the format. This is just intended to be our surface level reactions and what we're interested in presently. Traverse the Ulvenwald. What do you think about that card? Can we make that work in this format? I would have to look at the card pool.
That card's fine. Obviously, getting like creature or artifact into the graveyard can be tough, so we need to actually look and see what we can do. Mm-hmm. There's always like Ballista and stuff like that. So, God, the Oko memes are just out of control, man. It's just like, oh, Scarab God will Oko it. Well, Aetherworks Marvel will Oko it. It's like...
Dies the Doomblade.
Yeah. It's just the same thing.
Dies the Doomblade. Paradoxical Outcome. That's a powerful card. I think that is a card that only recently got the appropriate level of support in Modern to be strong enough. It's probably lacking something in this format. It really needs a critical mass of 0-cost artifacts.
I mean, we did play it in Standard with a bunch of 2-mana cyclers.
Yeah, but we lost a lot, and I don't.
No, we did. We did. I'm just saying it is possible to build that deck. Right. I'm not saying that it's not 2 turns slow, because it probably is. But
yeah, people talking Jeskai Ascendancy plus Emery right now, which I think is interesting. You can also do Paradox Engine plus Emery as a way to kill your opponent pretty efficiently. That one's good.
Torrential Gearhulk, I think, is solid. You need to find the right counter magic suite, and I'm not sure if it actually exists, but we'll do our best. Bedlam Reveler, I like it. No looting, no metamorphose. There's a little bit of an advantage to using your graveyard for delve spells instead of Reveler, but obviously both are good, so we'll see.
I'd be very sad if I didn't mention one of the free spells in the format, which is Burning Tree Emissary. Doesn't do much these days, but if it's free, it's me.
Yeah.
I would look at it.
Maybe Soulscar, Swiftspear, Reveler, and a bunch of Crash Throughs is supposed to be a deck.
Okay.
Might be short on burn spells, but maybe not.
People asking about in Soul Affinity, they say it was a deck in Frontier. I don't know anything about what was a deck in Frontier.
Also, this is different than Frontier.
That is true as well.
Either way, I think Affinity has enough cards to be playable. Like, it might not be disruptive, but you do have a very fast clock and very powerful cards. All That Glitters and Soul Artifact are both very good.
Very true.
Zombies might be good. You have disruption, you have removal, you have decent creatures. I mean, there's no fail rate on grizzly bears, right?
Bring to light scape shift. Have to think about that mana base. That sounds complicated. Be viable. Bring to light Niv Mizzet. Okay, you lost me now. That's it. That's a bridge too far. Gray Merchant. Oh, I wish we could do Gray Merchant again, but I highly, highly doubt it.
I don't know. You could, right? If you have enough disruption and just relevant interaction to slow people down, you can make the game get to that point.
Okay. Are you saying that as a devil's advocate right now, because you actually believe this?
I'm saying that I believe it. Like I think that black aggro, black mid range, those sort of things, those decks will probably be viable. It just depends on whether or not you play Thoughtseize, right? Maybe you play some Duresses on top or Collective Brutalities. Like those cards, that interaction has to actually be worth it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're doing like Fatal Push, Brutality, black mid-range stuff against mono red, you're going to want Gray Merchant, probably. You're going to want something to gain life on the top end.
Okay, very true.
And there are a bunch of very good black threats, so. Yeah, I'm not trying to do Gray Merchant plus Liliana's Mastery. That's too much.
Well, here's an interesting one. Vampires.
Yeah, I wrote down Sorin. Vampires might be tight.
Sorin is a silly, silly planeswalker, and I don't know exactly what vampires get added to the pool via this huge expansion, but that's definitely a Scryfall search you want to do 100%.
There's a lot of Eldritch Moon stuff, actually. There's this BB Lord that you can discard a card to do stuff. I pulled those out.
Yeah, hold this one up. I want to see it. This is going to take you forever. I already know you're going to be searching.
All right. No. So here's an Elder Deep Fiend.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that card.
Are you?
Yeah.
It's kind of green now.
It's got an odd tint to it.
I got Japanese Rally of the Ancestors.
That's good. We didn't talk much about Rally of the Ancestors. Obviously, that's like a fine starting point for the format. Very real combo deck.
That's more your home than mine.
Yeah, I played it at a PT, but I didn't spend much time with it either before or after that. The first games I ever played were at the PT, and then I never played it again. So not as much my deck as you would think.
Well, fair enough. Where's this stupid thing? I don't know. It's a BB2/2, man. You discard a card, put counters on things or something.
Do we have Vampire Nocturnus? That's got to be older than this, right?
Yeah, I would think so.
Also, I'm not actually convinced that card was ever any good, but that's besides the point.
Yeah, and you don't have fetches for it either.
Very true. Okay, Gerald, what are your quick hits? Let's make some closing statements about this format. Give me your level of excitement, 1 to 10. How excited are you for Pioneer?
I honestly think this is like what I want Modern to be, minus the busted stuff. Mm-hmm. And that stuff's going to get taken care of eventually.
Right.
Stromkirk Condemned. There you go. Yeah, Drana, I saw that in a list too. But yeah, man, I'm just like looking at these decks. I'm like, okay, this is like a very fair power level. There's a lot of very good cards, but nothing aside from the 3-mana Planeswalkers that really just like runs away with the game, you know?
Yeah, I hope that proves to be true. I hope we find a good place with some bans. It'll take bans. I mean, it would be silly to think otherwise. But it'd be very cool if we got to a place where the games mirrored more traditional games of Magic and just had this really big card pool. Also, just like, I like that my cards have value for longer. Like, that's always been an important part of Magic to me, and not because like I demand I get a return on my investment, but it just makes me feel a little bit better that I spend a lot of money on this hobby, and the truth is, in most instances, I can cash that money out if I want to. And like, there's not a lot of hobbies you can say that about. If you buy a ton of video games and you sell your video game collection, you're getting usually pennies on the dollar, right?
Oh, yeah.
With Magic, you generally get really good cash out spots, and this is just another way to give value to our cards throughout their existence. So I appreciate this. I'm glad this format exists. I think there's a lot of weird stuff going on with the timing, what sets we're hitting, the fact that it's going to be absent from Arena. All that stuff is a little strange. But on the whole, I would say I'm at like an 8 out of 10 about Pioneer. And from a Magic playing perspective, it's probably a 10 out of 10. Really excited to have a new format to explore.
Yeah, I'm always very scared to give anything a 10 out of 10 because I think things can always be improved upon. You know, things are never perfect. So I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10.
Okay. A little bit more conservative. I like that. really, I'm just talking about my own personal experience, and I know I will get a lot of joy out of this format. I'm looking forward to talking about it. I'm looking forward to playing it a bit. I guess that means I'll probably have to stream some Magic Online, which is not something I have done in a very long time. Do people even watch Magic Online streams anymore? If I do that, are people going to come, or is it just...
Dude, Todd is streaming Pioneer right now, or he was when we started this, and he had 1,000 people watching him.
Okay. Word. So people are pumped for
Magic
this.
Online.
That's impressive.
All right, he's got 891 now. Yeah, I'm already kind of trying to look to see who we can host. We also got a sub from Matt Dillon GG.
Oh, word. Appreciate that.
Yeah,
Thank
shout out to Matt.
Looks like there's a few other ones we might have missed along the way. We tend to get very focused on our cast while we're doing this. I see another one come in, Ghost Dad Bod. Appreciate y'all. Y'all are awesome for supporting us.
Yeah, Matt's org is called Ghost Gaming, if you want to go check that out.
Good stuff. Take a look at that.
All right, so we have Todd streaming Pioneer, and then Kane streaming actual Modern.
I feel like it would be disingenuous to send people to a Modern stream right now. They want that Pioneer action. I think we're going to send them Todd's way. Oh, it sounds like maybe Emma is hosting, or Emma is brewing right now as well.
Ooh.
Okay, Todd's got viewers. Well, we're going to send people to Emma. I like that better.
Why didn't Twitch put Emma at the top for me? Twitch, what are you doing?
Well, we'll find it. We appreciate y'all coming by and hanging out for this first Pioneer stream. There will be many more. There'll be many discussions. Maybe there'll be another podcast. Maybe.
Maybe. We just got to come up with more hours in the week somehow.
Right. If you guys know how to clone people, let us know. We'll make some clones of ourselves. They can host the Pioneer podcast and do that full time.
We wanted to also do some Runeterra stuff at some point, you know,
right.
So this is getting more and more difficult.
I don't know how we find the time, but we will find it for y'all because y'all are great and support us. If you enjoyed this, be sure to like, share, subscribe, do all that good YouTube stuff. Tell all your friends about it, and stay tuned for more good stuff coming in from Arena Decklists.
Twitter account at Pioneer DLS. Follow that.
Appreciate y'all. That's game.